Boom. We are live. We are populating. We are joined. Welcome to the Miami Heat Floor Crew, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Guys, we are live for the first time this season with a brand new, fresh crew. We got the Floor Crew here with us. We got my main man, Mr. Gadiel Cartagena. We got my main man, Mr. Marco Romo. We got a new addition to the squad, the man, Mr. Matt Hannafin. How you doing, my man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, and everybody that's watching, appreciate you, of course, for checking us out live. If you're stuck in through checking this Heat season, gutting it out, right? Make sure you guys like the video. Make sure you guys subscribe. As always, we appreciate any of the support, guys. But let's get right into it. It's been a little bit of a rough start to start the season, but there was a little bit of an uptick with getting that win in the play-in or the pre-early season tournament that we had. But before getting into, the season as a whole, I want to start talking about, some of the players that we've had, because, we've seen steps up from Tyler Herro, and we've seen the steps up from Bam Adebayo. Also, in my opinion, I feel like his assertiveness, that jump shot is smoother. We've seen a lot of things from the players taking steps. So I kind of want to get into the meat and potatoes of it right away. And I want to start with Tyler Herro, because that's a very hot topic of conversation. And I feel like he has taken a big step from last year. He didn't start the season as hot as maybe we would have all had wanted him to, but what he's done over the last couple of games have been really impressive, right? The volume is, of course, up, but the percentage of that true shooting percentage is becoming higher too. It's becoming more close to that where you want it to be for your high-level scorer, for your volume scorer. So, Gad, I'll throw this one to you, my man. Of course, as always, love seeing your beautiful face, but what have you liked about Tyler Herro's game earlier this season?
So I've been impressed. I didn't expect to kind of change the way that I was viewing Tyler Herro as a player. Maybe I really haven't moved off of what I thought he was to begin with. I think he's a very high quality scorer, someone who can be capable as kind of like a secondary playmaker, and kind of can just have some streaky moments from here or there. But so far, he's looked really good. Like, he's firmly in control with everyone that's in front of him. Like, he's in control when he's on the court for the most part, save for some of the fourth quarters where I feel like there's been moments where his shot selection gets a little, I don't really like it, but he very much feels like he is in control when he's on the court, and I like that. The pace is really good. I think he's been a lot smarter about what specific shots it is that he should be taking. Still getting blocked a lot more than probably any other player in the NBA, but that's fine, honestly, because he's trying to take the right shots, and I appreciate that. You're not going to get blocked every single time, so I like how he's trying to attack the rim a little bit. He's getting to that floater a lot more, which has looked really, really good. And he's making better reads off of a live dribble. So in terms of his individual game, I think he's doing a really good job. And in terms of how he's fitting around Jimmy and Bam, I think he's doing a really good job too. There's more movement. There's more, okay, I'm going to space to the 3-point line and kind of let them have the paint. So ultimately, I'm pleased with the way Herro's looked so far. Like, I understand they haven't done the greatest while he's playing great, but I think correlation is not causation in this scenario, or however the hell that saying goes. I think Herro's doing good, and I like that. And I think it's kind of on some of the other individuals on the team to start playing better in order to kind of right the ship.
Absolutely, man. Like you said, just being impressed with him overall. 1 assist shy of a triple-double. He's been showing off the assist handle as well, and something that I've really liked that Dean Millard brought up in the comments. And guys, join the comments, join the conversation. We appreciate you guys. But he says the defense has improved, and I love the off-ball reads that he's been making this season, right? He's been good at hawking that ball and really getting into those passing lanes and becoming much more of a well-rounded player. Also, the way that he's able to use his body. Early in the season, I saw him shrug off Drew Holiday getting to the rim. Like, that's not something you would have seen him do early in his career. So I love seeing him using that a lot more to his benefit as well. So Matt, I want you to kind of touch on some of the things you saw with, like I said, his defense, as well as, what's his, I think his off-ball 3-point shooting. I want to say Brady posted that it's like almost over 50% on catch and shoot for off-ball 3-point shooting. So I want to break down what you've liked from Tyler Herro and maybe some of the things that you also still want to see from him down the line.
Well, I mean, yeah, the defense has been something that's definitely stood out to me so far as we talked about the off-ball reads. It feels like he's seeing plays develop before they actually develop, and that's something that you sometimes see from guys like Jimmy. And that's, yeah, he's playing a lot more deliberate now, as Campo's saying. Like, you could see there's an added attention to detail, and there's added improvement, and I think that's just coming with the experience. I mean, this is what his 5th year in the league, 6th year in the league. Like, you can see him beginning to develop that more and more and more as time goes on. I mean, it's just some of the things that I want to see him continue to develop is like his passing, as Gad mentioned. He's more, you see more as kind of like a secondary playmaker, and his passing's been really, really good. But as we continue this season, we're going to be having the conversation of like, all right, what's the Miami Heat point guard situation going to look like when December comes, when January comes, when February comes, and you really kind of want to see Tyler develop more into that role. Not that he's been bad at it, because he hasn't been, but you just want to see him continue to add that. And like you talked about with his catch and shoot 3-point, like you want to see that maintain itself. Because I mean, I think he is for the season like 45% in total on 3-point shots. He's 55% over the last 3 games on threes on like 7.5, 8 attempts. Like he's getting them up. Obviously, it's an incredibly small sample, and that stuff might regress over time, but you want to see him maintain that efficiency from beyond the arc, whether it's 40%, 41%, so on and so forth. And I mean, it's been an awesome job. It's been awesome to see Tyler kind of become this lead creator with this squad, especially with the fact that Jimmy hasn't done a whole lot on the ball yet. And just in addition to what we've seen from Bam throughout the last several years. I mean, yeah, the shot selection in the fourth quarter and just sometimes his shot selection throughout a game is a little bit shaky, but that's just going to come with the Tyler Herro experiment. And that's what you're going to see when the offense gets mucked up in the half court, and when it's not really generating much of a flow. Sometimes he's had to bail them out. Sometimes he hasn't, but like we've seen that with him. That's not going to be anything new. And that's just something that we're going to have to live with over time with them. And that's something that we've lived with over time with them and still had success.
Absolutely. And I think it was was it the Pistons game, or it was one of the recent games where, oh no, it was the Brooklyn game where he was keeping them close, like that corner 3 falling out of bounds to hit it, to draw it to 1, like he kept it close. Don't know, Dan, my man, appreciate you joining us. Dean Millard saying Brady saying he's shooting 53% on pull-up threes. I just looked it up. It's 59% on catch and shoot 3 as far as the shots that he's taking. Like Matt said, 6 and 7 attempts per game. If you can keep around that, hover around 40%, that's exactly what you want to look at. But you brought something up, Marco, that was super, you brought something up that I wanted to talk about with Marco, which is Jimmy Butler, right? And with Jimmy Butler, it's a little bit of an interesting conversation, right? Because you know what you're going to get come playoff time with Jimmy Butler, right? Jimmy Butler is in the playoffs, arguably a top 5, top 3 guy, that you want to have on your team when it comes to a guy that can drag just a team on his back and is a winning player. But when it comes to the regular season, we're load managing, obviously, right? Because we don't want him to be run down when it comes to that postseason. But what do you want to see from Jimmy Butler during the regular season, Marco?
Honestly, definitely not playoff Jimmy, because if you ask him to do that throughout the whole season, you're gonna burn him out like you did in the lockout or the pandemic year. But also not this Jimmy, where he's not his efficient self. He's not really finishing inside the restricted area. I think they need like an in-between thing, because it's like that meme, does this man even care about basketball? The second coming of Jordan, you need something in the middle, which is what they've gotten. Like you can't deny that Jimmy's been like not been an all-star guy ever since he got to Miami, and that's who he's going to be. He's going to get back to his norms. He's had rough starts before. I think he even had a rough start even last year. Actually, he had a hard start the year before that, and then had a rough stretch in the middle. So, these stretches are going to come with Jimmy because it's not, the playoffs yet. So I'm not worried yet. I'm just a little, I'm a little cautious of what we're going to get from Jimmy the rest of the year. But I think he's going to come back to his norm. But I think the shots that he's taking right now aren't my favorite, because they're not coming off of like the best actions that Miami usually runs for him. It's usually a lot of like elbow touches for him, post touches. I think it's too many post touches at this point. He's trying to bully guys. Like that's what Jimmy does. But if you try to bully throughout a season, you're not a center. That's not going to work. So I think getting him better shots, easier shots, cuts. I love whenever Jimmy cuts on the baseline, especially when Bam has the ball at the elbow. That's like one of my favorite actions Miami has. I think those will come soon, but hopefully that efficiency comes back to, the Jimmy that we know.
Absolutely. And I think to one of your points that you made, unfortunately, he's not 2013 LeBron, where you can run a post-up offense and just fully make a whole season out of that, right? Because essentially that's what we did when Braun was here, was just post him up. And once he learned how to do that after the first season and got that under his bag, that was a big part of the offense. But with Jimmy Butler, you don't want to run him down to the ground with that. You don't want to put his body into that. He's a guy that has to be a little more physical. He's not the same build as LeBron, so he has to be a little more physical when using his body and coming to the post. So I loved what you said. I think making him a little bit more of an off-ball player, right? Whether it's Bam that has the ball in his hands or whether it's Tyler Herro that has the ball in his hands, right? Making him a guy that's able to be like a slasher, right? Like how D-Wade kind of became that secondary player off of LeBron, right? That's kind of what you want to do, is you want to make him that secondary guy at times. You don't want him to be the primary at all times because, I mean, at the end of the day, we have two young guys that are bound to be all-stars in Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro that should be carrying the load during the regular season. But Jimmy, the way you want him to match up his play style to the way this team is playing right now, for a regular season, like you said, Marco, I think exactly what you said. You want him to pick and choose his spots for when he's going to be posting up. Obviously, ideally, fourth quarter situations, you need a bucket. You put it to Jimmy in the fourth, but that's not where you want to start off in the first quarter, sticking the offense down, isolation plays with Jimmy. You want to start moving it earlier, and then when you need those buckets late, you can get those all later than there. But let's move on. I want to talk about some of the young guys as well, because we've seen some bright spots. Obviously, Haywood only played a couple of games so far, but he's looked really good in my opinion. We've also seen really some good flashes from Jaquez. I loved his game so far. He has a very mature game, which is not something you can say about a lot of rookies or a lot of young players, but he has a very mature game. He fits into the offense pretty well. Of course, he's a rookie. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have growing moments, but he's doing really well. And then, of course, there's Drew Smith. So, Gad, I was just curious, as far as like some of the young guys, give me just a breakdown on your favorite one that you've seen so far this season.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I think Jaquez would be the obvious choice because he's something that's new, but I've really loved the fact that Haywood Highsmith has grown into a role player that legitimately fits this team. I was high on Haywood Highsmith to begin with. I did not think he would turn into like almost a starting caliber 3-and-D type player, which you could argue he's at that level right now. Although I'll say the shooting will probably come back down to earth. His splits are like 63, 70 something right now. Like it's outrageous. But I think he is someone that really fits the mold of like, okay, what is the Heat's prototypical 4 been in the Jimmy and Bam era? It's been like that 3-and-D guy who can kind of play as like a pseudo 4/5 defensively. Not that Haywood, you want him to bang down there against fives all the time. I mean, Daniel Gafford had a bucket on him, I believe, and Gallinari as well last game, but someone that can at least like tag a rolling center and kind of slow them down a little bit and also box out and grab rebounds and kind of open things up in the paint while being able to screen and hit threes on the other end. So the fact that he's able to just do a whole bunch of these things is really impressive. I'm proud of the way that he fits, honestly. Like if he's able to continue shooting at this level, I understand that things are going to kind of ebb and flow throughout the season, but if he can stay at like a 37 to 40% 3-point shooter on decent volume, meaning like 3 to 4 threes a game, I think that makes a big difference for this forward rotation because they have guys that can do a little bit of everything, but they don't have a guy that can kind of put all the things together. I think Haywood can be that guy, and he helps you out a lot. So I'm proud of the way that Haywood has played, and I'd like to see him get more minutes. Like if you bump him up and maybe keep shrinking Kevin Love's spot in the rotation, I think that ultimately benefits the team, and then you can kind of use Kevin Love to size up a little bit more, become more important games in the regular season and playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, the first game of the season, when I saw Kyle Lowry and Kevin Love were starting, I'm like, are we in 2013? Like, that's not the lineup you want to see in 2023, you know? Like you said, when it comes to playoffs, those are guys that are going to give you some really quality minutes. They have that playoff experience, championship experience that you want on your team. But when it comes to day one starting lineup, you know, definitely would much rather have a Haywood Highsmith that is, of course, going to make some mistakes, but you'd rather him make those learning mistakes throughout the course of the season. He has some experience under his belt now from, you know, being with his teams in the playoffs and going through a grimy regular season with us, right? So now he's just going to be more polished. We see when those guys go through like a Gabe Vincent, they have a rough year, and then they understand the system. They understand where to fit, right? You see that with a lot of Heat players. So we're seeing that with Haywood Highsmith take that thing. Van Lee saying Caleb Martin plus Tyler Herro contracts match Donovan Mitchell perfectly. I am not getting blue balled anymore for the rest of my life as a Heat fan. So I refuse to make any expectations for any types of trades when it comes to this team. I mean, we had somebody demand a trade and said Miami only, but he didn't come here. All right, we're going to move on. But Matt, let's break down some more of these young guys, man. I'm also gonna throw Duncan in there because let's say young guys slash role players. We can even give them some love too. But as far as some of those guys that are obviously not part of our quote unquote big three, who have you enjoyed seeing the most, and what have you enjoyed out of them?
I mean, I'll go with the layup here. I'll go with Hawkes. I mean, the thing with I've talked about before. I on watch playback. Please go check that out when we do that during games. And on 5 on the floor, is I've been very impressed with his defense, and it's like his defense is rookie. Like he was an All Pac-12 defender at UCLA, but like you can see he has the instincts. He has he reads the scouting report. Like he knows the tendencies of some of these guys. Like you see you go back and look back at the tape with some of the defense that he played against, like Mikal Bridges, against Jason Tatum. Like he's doing this against league creators. He's doing this against some of the best offensive players in the sport. And like he's incredibly strong. He's incredibly sturdy. He has good balance. He has the foot speed. He has good hands. Like he has all that you want to see from a guy who's 6'6", 6'7". And again, he's just a rookie. Like he came in the league as being known as a team defender, but we've seen him individually in space. And even like sometimes in the post, like him hold his own. But like I'm just going back to what you were talking about, like with like Duncan looks a lot more comfortable. I think he's like 39% from deep right now, but it feels a lot greater than that because of his impact on the floor from what he could provide from a gravity standpoint. And then him just being off the ball. He has amazing feel as a cutter. He has amazing feel as kind of like he's a guy who, when you run like a staggered screen for someone else, he's a guy who, if he's that first or second screener, can slip. And he's always been incredibly good with that. I lost my train of thought for a second, but let's go on. Let's move with the course.
No, perfect, man. I mean, I think you broke down two of the guys that I kind of wanted to talk about too. Like you said, with Hawkes and Duncan, just kind of breaking down Duncan a little bit more. Even the stuff that he's doing with his ball in the hands, it's no longer solely dribble handoff, right? I think we were all sick and tired of the dribble handoff, and now it's really not as much prominence as far as that being the only way he's creating shots. He's getting to the rim. He's always been an excellent and underrated finisher. He's always been one of the best guys. Matt, come on now, we love those boys. Some of those, like I was saying, some of the reads that he's making in the rim, he just has a really good feel for the game. Obviously, when he initially got the contract, there was everything that's could be said about that, but he's still fitting into the team really well. He's not as much of a negative as previously, right? You would expect. Sometimes they're targeted on defense, but he's holding his own a little bit more, right? You're starting to see them just kind of grow up a little bit more. Tyler Herro and him just grow up as far as filling out their bodies a little bit more, just being a little more mature on the types of ways that their hands are being in the defense. So Marco, the one last guy that we didn't get to that I want to talk about is Jovic, right? And he had an excellent summer with the FIBA basketball. I think his team made it all the way to the second place and getting silver with FIBA, and he was a big part of that. And when you go through that experience and you play that type of basketball, do you think he's more fit towards that, and that's why he would have so much success there versus here? Do you think maybe it's just him still growing into his body? He just graduated high school not over a year ago. So what do you think maybe is the main reason that he hasn't shown the flashes that he's shown during the FIBA time in the summer?
I think obviously it's a mixture of not getting enough playing time, and his body just isn't ready. Eric Spoelstra's always said, if you can play defense, you're gonna get a spot in the rotation, unless you're like a veteran, like veterans that don't play defense that well. They usually get a little more leeway. Sorry to point out Kevin Love like that, but yeah, I think Jovic. The FIBA game is way different than the NBA game, and he also had a lot more freedom in the FIBA game. And also, honestly, during summer league, like that's more of an area that he can showcase some of his stuff. But in the NBA, the pecking order is a lot harder to get to the top, especially on a team like Miami that has so many guys that can handle the ball, that know how to play off the ball. He's just more of a guy that's still learning, like, what is my role in this league? Not even just on this team, like in the league in general. So it's him trying to find his role. Once he does, and he's like, okay, this is what I can do. I can be this kind of player, or I can fit in here. But whenever he does find that spot, I hope that he gets a shot in the system, in the Miami system, whether that's still getting some, reps in Sioux Falls, or, maybe more in-game reps. I don't know when those will come, but sometimes it just takes guys a little while to get into their rhythm and get to where they want to be in the league. So, and Jovic has always been, he's always going to be a guy that he wasn't going to be a Hawkes where he was going to come in and immediately, contribute. He was a 18-year-old kid that came out that was still in high school whenever Miami drafted him. So it's going to take a while for him. He's always going to be, an experimental player for Miami. So I preach a lot of patience with him, but I still think he's going to have a role in this league. I just don't know what that role is going to be because he doesn't know it either.
Yeah, and to your point, PV saying he thinks Jovic is hobbled. I mean, every player I think is never at 100% in the league, and like you said, he's still developing. So I'm sure, still kind of growing into his body as well. So he's still, like you said, Marco, understanding his spot. And when Caleb Martin comes back, I'd love for him to see him go down to Sioux Falls and like you said, get some of those on ball reps, especially on ball defensively, right? Because there are some really talented players in Sioux Falls that are excellent one-on-one players. So I'd love to see him get matched up with some of those guys just to get some of those reps defensively as well so he can start growing in that manner. Insurance by Lynette. Miss Lynette, we appreciate you always joining us as always. Saying he still looks lost on defense, which is true, right? He's still figuring out how to fit himself within the Miami Heat defense. But I think like Marco said, patience is going to be key with him. We've seen flashes during FIBA. We've seen flashes during preseason. And, as being as young as he is, I think we have to temper our expectations with him. He's not KZ Okpala where he's going to become Giannis in a couple of years. So we're still waiting for that to still happen. But, we still, with Jovic, there's a good potential that he could be a guy who's almost 7 foot tall that can handle the ball, pass the ball, shoot the ball from three, right? He's still finding his body, still finding his role within the league. But guys, we're almost upon 20, almost about 25, 30 minutes here. So I want to get into our last thing, which is the big picture with the Miami Heat team, right? So Gad, I'll start with you. And then we'll circle back around with Marco, I'll start with you. I let you finish with every topic with you last time. Marco, I'll start with you this time, and we'll circle back around to Gad. So this Miami Heat team, right? Obviously, like we talked about, there's a couple of bright spots on this team, even though our record might not show it. And there's a couple stuff that we can improve on. So I want you to give me one thing that you really want to see change as the season progresses with this team moving forward.
One thing, I guess, in a macro sense, offense in general, which is funny because Eric Spoelstra never talks about offense. He's always like, oh, it's always our defense. But to see him go at the offense, like the first 2 weeks of the season, he's like, we need to practice or we're just focusing on offense. That's been basically the big thing for Miami is they can't score and also they can't defend. They haven't been good at one thing. But he knows that this team can be a good defensive team. And honestly, I think they can too. I think when you have Jimmy and Bam, you can have a league average defense, not a bottom, 10 defense in the league. I think the defense will come around. It's really just the offense for me. And I think we need more offside action because Miami, something that was pointed out on Twitter, I forget who pointed it out, I think it might have been John Jablanca. He said Miami runs a similar offense to Golden State, but Golden State has a lot more, weak side action, and they run a lot more stuff off the ball than Miami does. And that's a thing Miami, I think, has to incorporate more because they're not a type of team that has, a Steph Curry or, a Klay Thompson level kind of guys. Klay Thompson may not be the same guy, but he still gets respected the same way around the league. So I think Miami has
game winners.
Well, yeah, exactly. So they still get that same respect. Miami's guys are still kind of more unproven than those guys. I think more off-ball stuff, more, action with intention, because a lot of action that Miami has this year is just a lot of, what are we doing? We're kind of going through a last-second pick and roll here, or we're just going to cut for the sake of cutting. So there needs to be a lot more intention in their action. I also want to see them clean up a lot of the really bad, the stretches that Eric Spoelstra pointed out. They can blow up a lead either to 16 or the lead shrinks right back down to like 4 or 3 points. Those stretches have been killing them this year. Against the Wizards, they did a better job of that until the fourth quarter where, they let their foot off the gas. But there's a lot of those stretches this year that they have a lot of opportunities for them to like blow up a lead, or they just either wither down and like they let it get to their heads and everything kind of snowballs after that. So cutting down on those, runs that they've kind of let up, I think they really need to fix that, and that makes the season look a lot better. Whenever you clean that up, and you get these easier wins. You get like a 15-point win against the worst teams in the league, which they have a good stretch coming up where they can build up on that, or they can have like even more clutch games, which I hope not. But they have a good shot here in the upcoming schedule.
Absolutely, man. And to your point with that, we have had a gauntlet as far as the teams we've had to play through early in this
A lot
season.
of road games too.
Yeah, and exactly, a lot of road games. So there will be a positive turn with this season, right? On top of that, Haywood Highsmith has just gotten healthy. We're still getting Caleb Martin back, right? The wing defenders on this team. This is a wing-driven league, guys. So if you don't have wing defenders on this team, it makes it a lot harder to pick up on those players, right? Those Chris Middletons, those Jason Tatums, right? Those players like that. You stick a Caleb Martin on those guys, and maybe they're not gonna hold him off as much, but they're gonna make it hard, right? You stick up Haywood Highsmith, and he can hold his own against those guys. So I love to see as the season goes on, those guys get integrated, the lineup get a little bit more assured. I think that's going to be a big defensive boost when it comes to this team, as well as, like you said, Marco, finding purpose on offense, right? I think when you have guys like Jaquez and Jovic having to plug in, and even guys like Drew Smith, where I didn't really expect him to be getting as much minutes, right? When those guys are playing early in the season, they're still figuring out what to do on offense, so the motion isn't as smooth, right? It's not as oiled up and ran through as many times, pause. But, we're going to, as far as that, like you said, you want to just become a little bit better as far as that's concerned. Matt, give me something you want to see as far as some changes down the season, continuing through the season with the Miami Heat.
Rebounding. Miami's bottom 5, bottom 6 team in rebounding percentage. They've been a mediocre defensive rebounding team, and we know this team historically, they don't really offensive rebound at a high rate. They prioritize transition defense over that. But as Pat Riley once famously said, no rebounds, no rings. And like people say defense wins championships. Well, rebounding also wins championships. It goes hand in hand. And that speaks to kind of like the defensive struggles a little bit, but like the most important thing, or one of the most important things about about defense is closing the possession. And when you're a bottom 5, bottom 6 team in rebounding percentage, that's obviously not conducive to success, or at least long-term success. And so that's one thing right now that you're nitpicking through a 6-game sample of what you want to see Miami improve, but that's definitely something that you have to improve if you want to make it at least into May, into June. And this isn't the first time we've seen this with Miami, but it's obviously not something that you want to spill over a 20, a 30, a 40 plus game sample. And so I guess that's just the one thing I'm looking for Miami to improve right now is let's collectively rebound. I mean, Bam is one of the best guys in the league at boxing out, but you need 5 guys on the glass like that. It can't just be one person. And so I think that's what Miami can do better in the long term is just rebounding the ball collectively as a unit.
Absolutely. I think Tyler Herro even recently brought up about him being a good rebounder for his size, right? And I think that is true. I think he's an excellent rebounder for his size, and I think he can continue to be that as well. And to your point about rebounding, I mean, rebound Bosch, back out to Allen, his 3-pointer bang, right? Talk to the Spurs. Obviously, no rebounds, no rings, right? So that's definitely a big part of, having to do that with the future team. Because if you're a great team defensively, but you're giving up stops, if you're giving up second options, right? If you're giving up second rebounds, second chance points, it just becomes harder. You have to defensively lock in for 60 seconds in a row instead of just 24 max, right? So now it becomes a lot harder. That math didn't math, but it becomes a lot harder as far as just how the things roll, with the making your defense a little bit smoother with that. Now, yeah, close this out, my man. And then I'll close out on the show, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. I think they've played some tougher matchups to start the year. In terms of Minnesota is going to be a tough matchup for them offensively. I think Milwaukee's a tough matchup for us defensively. Boston's a tough matchup on offensively. Defensively, I don't really think they're all that. Although they have some guys that can stick with Jimmy, but I don't know. Regular season Jimmy they can stick with. Postseason Jimmy, it's a different story. Anywho, I would like to see them kind of just find their comfort zone offensively. Every game, there's been pockets where it looks really good, and then there's pockets of incompetence where everything's going east-west. You're not getting stuff downhill. You're taking bad jumpers. You're not playing to your strengths. I think there's some players like Tyler that have been playing to their strengths the entire year. I'd like to see some of the other guys get comfortable. Now, I still think even with them getting comfortable and finding their roles, ultimately this team is going to feel incomplete because you're going to end up needing someone else who can get some sort of tertiary or secondary rim pressure. You need someone who can get the damn ball in the paint, and you need someone who can make a play in the paint with the ball in their hands. So I think that's still going to be lacking, but I think they will become a little bit more comfortable. I think you'll see Jaime have the ball in his hands a little bit more. I think you'll see Jay Rich have the ball in his hands a little bit more. Fingers crossed that actually ends up working out. If he can start playing a little bit more deliberately, like Tyler, and not really trying to pick and choose all these different roles and just find like one or two things that you need to do on offense every single game, I think that'll help these lineups a lot. Because there's been moments where he's been on the floor and it feels a little helter-skelter, and that's fine. You know what? You're on a new team. I understand he played here before, but this is a different Miami Heat team that he's playing with right now. He never played with this iteration of the Heat. So I think just finding comfort, man. There's a lot of new pieces in the puzzle right now. So I think they will get there at some point. This is a good basketball team. I don't think it's a great basketball team right now, but I think they have potential to be great in the future. So we'll see where it ends up going. But that's it. That's my spiel.
Absolutely, man. And to your point, I do think this is a good basketball team that, I mean, you throw them in the playoffs with anybody, they can be dangerous, right? I mean, I don't care what everybody says. Obviously, I'm probably one of the most hurt people about us not getting Dame. But at the end of the day, you put, Jimmy Butler and surround him with some solid guys to get in the playoffs. I mean, we didn't have Tyler Herro last year. We went to the finals, right? And Tyler's come back pretty solid to start off this season. I've loved what I've seen from him so far. He's really shown some growth. I think mentally, we see a lot of the growth, right? The growth has been very mental in his game. Of course, there's a lot of the physical aspects, but mentally he's grown a lot. But before closing it out, I do want to answer one of the questions that Van Lee asked. Which teams are you guys secretly hoping to fail to get some of their players at the deadline? So I want to do a quick spin around the room real quick. Just keep it real quick. My quick answer, I would love to see Chicago fail so we can get like a Zach LaVine. But Gad, I'll roll it to you. Who would you love to see fail so we can potentially pick up?
I don't even need a Zach LaVine. Van Lee, I 100% agree with your answer. Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie, specifically Dinwiddie. Dorian Finney-Smith is a little redundant on this team, but I still take him. Specifically Dinwiddie. That would make a big difference for this team, in my opinion.
Marco.
I'd say Detroit, but they're going to fail anyway. So I'm actually going to hop onto your bandwagon with the Bulls. Bring me Alex Caruso. That's one of my favorite guys in the league to watch play defense. He's like a white Marcus Smart. So bring me white Marcus Smart. Or also, honestly, the Grizzlies as well. Just bring me regular Marcus Smart, honestly.
Matt, close this out, my man. Who do you want on the team?
I mean, my first answer was Washington, but they're going to be bad anyways just because of Tyus Jones. I mean, maybe like Toronto with like Siakam, even though that's an unrealistic option because it's one, dealing with Masai Ujiri, and two, it's Pascal Siakam. You're probably not going to get him for cheap. I'll just stick with Tyus Jones. I mean, I'm not really rooting for a team to fail because we know who's going to be bad most likely. But there's, I guess, some kind of gray area with some teams. Brooklyn with Dorian Finney-Smith's a good option from what Gad said. But I'll stick with the Tyus Jones. Maybe even Trey Jones from San Antonio. I don't know. But I don't think they're going to trade him either. So,
Gad?
I don't care about any of the players on their team to trade for, but I am preying on Portland's downfall for ancillary reasons. So if they keep losing, and I root for Scoot Henderson, but if he happens to have one of the worst rookie years of all time,
leave it at that.
I'm just saying.
And secondarily, maybe not towards the deadline, but I would love to see the Cleveland Cavaliers fail just to potentially, see what Donovan Mitchell wants to do out there. But at that note, guys, we love talking about trades. We love talking about who we can have on this team. We got to talk about who we do have, and I appreciate the whole crew here. We had Gad, we had my main man Marco, and the new blood, Mr. Matt Hannafin. Appreciate you joining. But guys, as always, everybody in the comments, we appreciate you joining as always. Make sure you guys like the video. Make sure you guys subscribe if you aren't. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord as well, and everything as far as what we do here. And we'll see you guys next week on Sunday night. So appreciate you guys joining the floor crew here. And you have a great night.